bringing you the stories behind the standards. This is the BSI Education Podcast with Matthew Childs and Alan Sellers. Today's episode is on the IEC's Young Professionals Programme.
Hello, my name is Matthew Childs and I'm with Alan Sellers. Hello Alan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And how are you, Matthew?
I'm very well, thank you. We have made it to 2021.
We have indeed, haven't we? Feels a lot like 2020 still.
Yeah, the sequel is not living up to much at the moment, is it? But how about New Year's resolutions? Are you a New Year's resolutions fan?
No, I don't tend to get around to setting them, to be honest. How about you?
Yeah, not really. My year resolutions tend to be around health and fitness, and I think springtime tends to be a better place to do that than in the depths of winter. But the sun is shining today, so yeah, that's one thing.
I think you're right. I do remember one year signing up for a 10k and a half marathon at this time of year because it was buy one get one free.
Well, look, the new year brings new opportunities for the podcast. And we've got fantastic episodes lined up for 2021 already and some new features. So we thought, as well as bringing you fantastic episodes around the worlds of standards, we would also bring you a new feature every episode, which is a little news feature. We thought we'd bring you information about standards that are in the news or standards making the news, and also to bring information about standards that are currently out for public consultation. So we're always looking for people to get involved in standards making. So without further ado, Alan, can we have your news roundup, please?
Yeah, come over here to the standards desk of news. First up, we have the news that BSI's pandemic safe working guidelines have been published as an international standard. So Matthew, you'll remember back in episode 4, I'm sure, that we talked to Sally Swingewood and Martin Cottam about how these guidelines were developed. Do you remember that?
I do indeed. Yeah. And I think that was draft 2 of the guidance, and it's fantastic to hear that the plans were then. Sally and Martin were talking about how they were planning to make it a full international standard. So that's fantastic that has finally happened.
Yeah, well, at least we can now say that we knew them before they became internationally renowned. You know, glad they got over the tricky second album, I guess, and now they're international stars. And you know,
we could almost call it an exclusive, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Exclusive news. I'll have to make a note of that for the next news roundup. Anyway, it really is a big achievement to have an international standard published in 3 months, particularly when it's usually 3 years to get something done at this level. So big congratulations from us on the podcast to everyone involved there. So next, we have the news that's really important if you sample, test, inspect or certify anything, because you'll want to know about the revisions that have been made to the international standard BS, EN, ISO, IEC 17000. That's it. It's the terms and definitions used in conformity assessment. Now, in contrast to 3 months, this is the first update to this standard in 16 years. That's right, Matthew, 16 years. That's a lot of time to. And
they say this. They say the wheels of the standards world turn slowly. And there you go, 16 years. Wow.
I just wonder how much has changed in 16 years in conformity assessment. I mean, are there really that much that has changed? I mean, you'd expect quite a heavy revision to that standard there, wouldn't you? But, you know, I wouldn't want to dare go and read it if it's just a few kind of tweaks here and there. But there we go. I'll maybe put that on my reading list. And, you know, I think it's fair to say, Matthew, like you were saying, we're planning some episodes here and there along the way, and we will cover conformity assessment at some point, so please do listen out for that. And finally, if, like me, you're plagued with the habit of checking approval marks on electrical products, you'll be ecstatic to hear the news that there's a new kid on the block. It's the UKCA mark. Now, truth be told, Matthew, I spotted this mark last year at Christmas. Now, I think it kind of shows the depths to which I've been sucked into the world of standards, because I saw it on a Christmas stocking filler that was for one of my children. And you know what? It was the best Christmas present ever, seeing that UKCA mark on that wrapping. I can't even remember what the toy was. It's quite shocking, really, isn't it, Matthew?
It is a little bit. So, so you can't remember the toy, but you're just looking out for logos on wrapping. Yeah.
And I maybe I shouldn't dob these people in, but there are one or two people out there that have sent me images of this UKCA mark over the last the last few months. So, maybe we should have like a finder's fee, or I don't know, not a finder's fee. Maybe we should have some sort of prize for our listeners out there for finding these UKCA marks. Maybe you could have your inbox at BSI Education filled up with UKCA marks, or maybe if you're feeling a bit annoyed with me, you could give out my email address. But I'll move on. What is the UKCA mark, I hear you're asking? Well, it's the UK Conformity Assessment mark. So the UK has its own certification mark that is replacing most products that were previously CE marked. Now, the CE mark, if you might not know what it is, you might do. It's that funny looking C and an E, and it's part of the European Conformity Assessment System, part of the single market. And a little thing called Brexit has happened, and so we're no longer using it. So look out for the UKCA mark.
You made an important point there, Alan, about conformity assessment. It's something that's come up, hasn't it, in a number of different episodes. So we are, as Alan says, we are going to deal with that separately. And obviously the UK CA mark is an important part of that story. So that is something we want to cover in a bit more depth. And Alan, you mentioned there about getting in touch with the podcast. And I just want to give people a reminder about an upcoming episode that we want to do called the press conference episode. So if you've ever wondered about how standards are made, or who gets to make them, or why standards are numbered in the way that they are, and who gets to choose those numbers, or maybe there's something more specific about standards that's related to your job or the sector in which you work, well, this is your chance to ask us, to ask Alan and myself, and we'll ask a panel of experts to answer your questions. So please record your questions via audio message and email them into education@bsigroup.com. And as I say, we'll put the best ones to a panel of experts in a future episode of the BSI Education podcast. Now, the aim of this podcast is to bring you the stories behind the standards. Today's story is about developing the next generation of standards makers, and more specifically about the IEC's Young Professionals Programme. Now, every year, BSI and its partners offer young engineers the chance to take part in this Young Professionals Programme. The programme brings together the world's upcoming expert engineers, technicians and managers, and provides them with opportunities to shape the future of international standardisation and conformity assessment in the field of electrotechnology. The next generation of standards makers has been one of our ongoing themes. Now, we covered this back in our very first episode when we spoke to Kat Rosier and Navdeep Mihai about how standards had an impact on their careers. We also covered it back in episode 3 when we looked at stakeholder engagement in standards generally. But before we go any further with this particular story, here's a quick guide to the IEC.
The International Electrotechnical Commission, or the IEC, is the global organization that prepares and publishes international standards for all electrical, electronic, and related technologies. These include consumer devices, such as mobile phones and refrigerators, office and medical equipment, information technology, electricity generation, and much more. The IEC's role is to help ensure the safety and efficiency of devices, systems, or services for people and the environment, to enhance international trade, facilitate broad electricity access, and enable a more sustainable world. Founded in June 1906 in London, the IEC brings together more than 170 countries and provides a global, neutral, and independent standardization platform to over 20,000 experts. Its members, including BSI, appoint experts to participate in IEC standardization. The IEC also administers 4 conformity assessment systems, which certify that devices, systems, installations, services, and people work as required. The IEC has published over 10,000 standards, which together with conformity assessment provides the technical framework that allows governments to build national quality infrastructure and companies of all sizes to buy and sell consistently safe and reliable products in most countries of the world.
So Alan, the IEC Young Professionals Programme, you've been on this, right?
I have, yes. It's certainly been one of those experiences that has shaped my career since, I have to say. It's exciting for me to be doing this podcast and hearing all the experiences and interviews and insights that we have here. And yeah, certainly for me, I was on the outside of standardization looking in, and it was a bit of a very odd world, I have to say, seeing standards pop up that affected the company that I worked for at the time, and then becoming involved in a way to develop standards so that they better suited the industry that I worked in at the time. But I have to say, being a part of the IEC Young Professional Programme really got me into the middle of the IEC, into the processes, understanding what's going on. And I think this will probably come through in the things that other people say. It's the networking opportunities that you get. I've met people from many different countries in lots of different sectors doing lots of different things, and I'm still in touch with lots of them. And they're invaluable in what I do, I have to say. And for me, personally, it was a great cultural experience. I really feel that when I'm challenged by the way other people do things and approach things, it causes me to think myself about how I do things. And from that, I've grown a lot. You know, I think I first went a while back now, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And now as I've developed in my career and I am where I am today, leading a team of engineers in this area, I begin to see the benefits of that as an employer as well.
I think that's really important you mentioned that. I was about to say, obviously you've had a fantastic personal experience in terms of your own professional development, but there's an employer perspective to this too. And I suppose later on we'll just turn the tables on you a bit, Alan, and you can go from co-host to interviewee. Excellent. And tell us about the programme from an employer perspective. This is me interrupting myself to remind you that for more information on BSI education, go to bsigroup.com/education. This link and others on the themes raised in this episode can be found in the episode notes. Do please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and share us on social media using the hashtag BSIEdPod. And if you have any comments or questions about this episode or ideas for future episodes, then do please get in touch at education@bsigroup.com. We really welcome your feedback. Now, we wanted to cover this story from all angles and speak to a wide range of people about the programme itself. Those who are going on the programme, those who've already been on it. We also wanted to get that employer perspective. Plus BSI too, we've supported the programme since its inception, and we also wanted to get the perspective of one of our partner organisations. Now make sure you listen right to the end of the podcast for more information about how you too can take part in this year's IEC programme. But we begin with the IEC's perspective. We spoke to Aristia Kyriakati, Head of Affiliate Countries and Membership Programmes at the IEC. We started by asking her to tell us a bit more about what the programme is all about.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. So each year, the IEC Young Professionals Programme seeks new participants, engineers, managers, technicians involved in the fields of electricity and electronics to join the quite famous now IEC Young Professionals Programme. There are some eligibility requirements there. We're looking for participants aged between early 20s to mid 30s. They should have some experience in the standard development or the use of standards in the context of conformity assessment, and they should be working for a business, an industry, an association, or government body that is using or contributing to the work of the IEC. The participants are handpicked by the IEC national committees to represent their country in the program. And basically, they get the opportunity to participate to the annual Young Professionals Workshop that the IEC organizes alongside the IEC General Meeting. This takes place sometime in September, October each year. The young professionals have the opportunity to see the IEC in action, to meet technical experts from all around the world, in order to better understand why participation at the global level is an essential strategic tool. Then after the workshop, young professionals are encouraged to continue their involvement in standardization and conformity assessment at the international and national level. And they're also invited to attend dedicated activities for young professionals, and also to provide input on how the IEC can attract the next generation of experts.
And in terms then of what's involved in a sort of a typical workshop week, what would be the experience of a young professional? What sorts of things would they be getting involved with?
Right. So it's a very interactive format, a 3-day workshop, at least until now. We are hoping to increase the duration to 5 days from now on. But during these 3 days, they get an overview of the IEC work. They get the opportunity to attend the conformity assessment board meeting or the standardization management board meetings. They can take part in meetings of technical committees, and then we have a series of interactive sessions and breakout sessions where they really can suggest ideas. They can take part and contribute with their own suggestions. There's a series of social events also. That's the fun part, I guess, of the workshop, where they get together not only as a group, but also meeting other officials. And on the third day, they also have the opportunity to take part in a site visit, which is usually hosted by the host committee.
And in terms of benefits then, I mean, you mentioned there about the social events. I suppose, just building on that, what are the benefits for young professionals of taking part in this international program?
So I firmly believe that the Young Professional Program offers an important networking platform to the young professionals, and it's a unique opportunity for them to help shape international standardization and conformity assessment work. We see this more and more, and it's a feedback we get from the young professionals that they want more opportunities for networking. So I guess that the YP program offers this opportunity for them, and hoping that we'll be able to expand this throughout the year, and not only at the workshop where they meet once a year.
So it sounds like the program is quite integrated with the work that goes on with the IEC when they come together. Is it like that, or is it more like a side event?
I would say it's quite integrated because the young professionals do select technical committees that they would like to attend. It's part of the IEC General Meeting, so that's why you can't have a workshop without an IEC General Meeting. That was the idea from the beginning, and it will continue being like that. So not only from the young professional side, but also from the senior expert side, we get a lot of interest every year from experts who want to organize a workshop or organize an interactive session during the workshop in order to get more ideas from the young professionals.
We've spoken on the podcast episodes before, Aristia, about the importance of investing in the next generation of standards making. It's something we do at the BSI Education. It's the sort of core purpose of what we do here. But I wanted to hear it from an international perspective, an IC perspective. Why do you think it's important that national standards bodies and national committees invest in young professional activities at national level?
I think, and what we've seen so far by coordinating the Young Professionals Programme is that, well, national committees, by investing in YP activities, they make a long-term investment in their future, focusing on finding the talent and expertise in both standardization and conformity assessment. Basically, it's the opportunity for them to have the right people around the table. So succession is an important aspect of the young professional activities, whether they are organized in the international level or the national level. So I think that's a very important aspect of it.
In terms of the program itself, then, how long has it been running?
The IEC Young Professionals Programme was launched back in 2010. 11 years ago. And the first workshop took place in Seattle during the IEC General Meeting at the time, and has welcomed more than 600 participants. So quite a big and diverse community there.
So in terms of, obviously, that incredibly successful in creating that community, I suppose, looking back over the past 10 years, what broader impact do you think the program has had or is continuing to have?
So basically the participants, the young professionals, have been the best promoters of the program. And I think the impact that the program has had is through them and through their achievements. So what I would like to highlight there is that, and what we've seen so far from the data we've got collected, is that more than 30% of those 600 YPs of IEC now hold positions within IEC as members, conveners, project leaders within technical committees. They also participate in other IEC focus groups, such as ad hoc groups, management advisory boards, or task forces. And more than 60% of these 30% involved hold more than one position. So we see them being active, being engaged, and continue contributing with their ideas. We even have young professionals who are now NC presidents or secretaries, so they make an impact in their own countries. And I'm sure there are many more involved in the national level and in conformity assessment activities. Unfortunately, we don't have this data available yet. So there are so many stories I could highlight from the young professionals.
So it sounds like these young professionals become much more involved in the work that the IEC does, both at an international level and then back home with their national committees, working on various different standardization projects, or maybe going back to testing things. And I'm really interested in the difference that you think this engagement makes. What is it that's so good or so important about this? If you had to give it in a couple of sentences, what would you say?
We have seen that wherever there is a young professional involved in an activity that a young professional is involved, there is a change. There is a change in the way of thinking, in the way of working, in the ideas they are bringing in, and the expertise they are having. We talk about young professionals, but they are already having a lot of experience and expertise from in their professional lives, so they're very enthusiastic to contribute this to technical work. They've been involved in several projects that I can mention that have made a difference, and some of them were the base of new projects that came in or new ideas. So there I could mention, for example, there have been several attempts to raise awareness of standardization in academia, but at the same time, a young professional developed a mock technical committee, one standard in one day, to experience the whole development process of a standard in a practical manner. And this is now being part of trainings that the IEC is organizing. We know very well that young professionals, as I said earlier, have been ambassadors of young professional activities, and many of them have then went back to their countries and developed national YP programs, which is very, very important.
So it sounds like these young professionals are selected for some sort of aspect that they're using standards, they have knowledge of standards, they might be using them to test things, and they want to know more about where these standards are coming from. And the IEC offers this Young Professionals Programme, which over the last 10 years seems to have gone from strength to strength. And then they attend this programme, get right into the heart of the IEC and work out and understand what's going on there. And then they come back to their national committees, back to their own countries, back to their employers. And that newfound knowledge and experience must be incredibly valuable for both the employer and the national committee. It sounds like a fantastic programme.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, indeed. I think everybody benefits from it. The young professional, the national committees who select them, but also their employers. They are able to bring back all of the experience and the networking they've done back to their professional networks.
Arista, you mentioned something there about speedy standards a moment ago, and about having to develop a standard in a day, which I think is a fascinating idea. Obviously, something happened last year, and it's continuing to happen really, that affected everybody, and obviously COVID-19. I just wonder, what changes did you have to make to last year's program because of COVID-19?
Yes, we also the YP program was impacted by the pandemic. Originally, the general meeting was scheduled to take place in Stockholm, in Sweden, and then we were working on a 5-day workshop at the time. Then the general meeting moved to Geneva, and it would host only management meetings. So as a result, we had to reduce the duration of the workshop to 3 days, as no technical meetings would take place. Well, in the end, the general meeting was held online, and at the time, around September, October last year, we had to take the difficult decision to cancel the workshop in 2020. The reason being that after a consultation with several groups and young professionals, we felt that an online workshop would not be conducive to the core benefits of the workshop, which, as I mentioned several times, includes networking opportunities and experiencing IEC in action. So that was the major change due to the pandemic. However, during these difficult times, it became even more important to us to continue engaging with the young professional community, and especially the young professionals that were nominated to participate to the 2020 program. Therefore, we started organizing online activities. We had the first webinar taking place in December on the regulatory models around the world. That was a young professional-led activity from the YP leaders, and there is more to come on a monthly basis. We also try to provide more opportunities for young professionals to participate in the IEC work. So we launched some call for application to join, for example, the task force on the Sustainable Development Goals, the ad hoc group on the review of the standards development process, and the ad hoc group on the COVID consequences. So we now have young professionals participating in these three groups and hoping that we'll have more opportunities for them in the months to come.
It sounds to me like you had to do, like a lot of organisations were having to do, was to adapt to the conditions presented by the pandemic. But it sounds to me as if you've then created other opportunities for those young professionals to become involved. I just wonder, with looking ahead then to this year's program, obviously with a sort of COVID caveat, can you tell us a bit about this year's program, and maybe if it's evolved from previous years, if you're planning for it to be any different to what you've done in previous years?
Yes, of course. So again, we are working on a 5-day workshop for 2021, which should take place during the JARA meeting in Dubai in October. So there, the idea is to have more opportunities for networking, introducing more breakout sessions, leading to the site visit at the end of the workshop. So there will be a formal announcement coming up over the next few weeks. And then obviously from the feedback that we got from the young professionals, which is quite positive, we would like to continue with the online activities to keep the engagement throughout the year. And as a third dimension, I would also mention the projects that the young professional leaders have agreed to carry on over to this year, that are very, very influential. And there we give the opportunity to more young professionals to be part of the project team and contribute.
So in terms of long-term plans, then, do you have any long-term plans for how the program will change?
That gives me a very good stepping stone to mention a little bit about the project that two of the IEC Young Professional Leaders are working on. There is a pilot program to promote cultural diversity within the IEC YP program, helping the newest IEC members to structure their own activities for young professionals. So the idea, a long-term goal of the program would be to collect all the best practices to structure a national YP activities and share it within the national committee, so they also understand the value of having national activities for their young professionals. We hope to continue to grow and to raise awareness about the program in the IEC level and national committees, of course. And again, the program is inspired from the young professionals. So what has worked very well until now is that it's a program from young professionals to young professionals. So I would like to keep this inspiration going on.
Now, Aristia, we ask all of our guests to tell us about their standards journeys, and you're not going to get away with it. So we need to know yours too. We did. Now we're really keen to know what's your standards journey. How did you get to this point? Have you been seduced by standards?
Yes, I think right now I have. But to be honest, I had no idea what the IEC was about. I used to work for United Nations agencies in Geneva, and I would pass by the IEC central office building every day, as it was across the street. So I did not know about IEC standardization or conformity assessment. I have no technical background myself. I'm a boring lawyer by education. I hope I do not sound like one still. I ended up working for IEC. I'm passionate about bringing communities together, and I've worked with different communities in the past, high-level officials, trade experts, medical doctors, and I thought that this community would be a lot different to what I had in mind. But after engaging with experts on standardization for the 9-10 months, I see that there are more similarities than differences, and supporting the young professionals on one hand and developing countries on the other is the ideal setting for me to be innovative and help streamline all the ideas and suggestions I get.
We should probably say a big shout out to all our lawyer listeners out there as well. But
well, I'm really interested in this journey, because you pass by the office of the IEC every day in your previous job, and yet you had no idea about the IEC. I think that's fantastic. And with no technical background, which often people think you need to work within standards, here you are, bringing communities together that develop things for the IEC. I think that's absolutely amazing. That's great.
Yeah, I think it's rediscovering about, standards bring all sorts of people together. I think that's a really nice message. Arista, we're about to launch here at BSI. We're about to launch the sort of competition for this year to participate in this year's program. I just wonder, as a final thought from you, what would you say to any young engineer thinking about taking part of this program? What would be the one thing you'd say to them?
I would recommend everyone to join the IEC YP program or any national young professional program in their country. I think it's a fascinating opportunity for them to experience standardization work in action, meet people from all around the world, and have their voice heard. I think this is the most important thing, and if I'm sure they have great ideas that everybody can benefit from. So do not miss your chance. Apply.
Now let's hear from some of the young professionals themselves. Now, we spoke to Navdeep Mihai. He took part in 2017 when the program took place in Vladivostok. Now, Navdeep is Machine Control and Protection Group Leader at the UK Atomic Energy Authority. We also spoke to Shahid Khan, Sean Neeson and Fiona Robertson. Now, Shahid is Technical Manager at the Electrical Contractors Association. Sean, he's Group Quality Manager at Mayborn Group Limited. And Fiona is a Test Engineer at LaserMet. As we'll hear, these three young professionals should have attended the programme in Stockholm in 2020, but COVID. So Fiona, if I could start with you, you're a test engineer at LaserMet. Can you tell us a bit more about your role there and what LaserMet does?
So my day-to-day job is classifying a huge variety of lasers to the safety standard 6085 Part 1. So we test everything from handheld laser pointers to medical lasers to complete welding laser systems. We also classify LEDs to the LED safety standard, and I also train laser users in how to use lasers safely. LaserMet's actions, apart from my role, is manufacturing laser safety products such as laser protective screens, goggles, interlock systems, things like that.
Now, Sean, Fiona there deals with lasers. So that sounds pretty cool to me. So you're group quality manager at Mayborn Group Limited. Tell us a bit about Mayborn and what you do as a group quality manager.
Yeah, so Mayborn Group is a juvenile products company. Most people know Mayborn as the brand, which is Tommy Tippy. So we do quite a wide array of products, or to the simpler products such as baby bottles and soothers, to the slightly more complicated in the electrical field, so electric sterilizers, night lights, breast pumps, and then obviously we do a handful of toys as well, both electrical and non-electrical toys. So my role in the context of standards is really, it's very much day to day. So, we manufacture our own products, we source products as well, and we need to make sure that all of those products comply with, various standards and various regulations around the world. So, covering IEC standards, but, EN standards as well. So, for the toy standards, so EN 62115, that's kind of a big part of what it is that the standards that we have to comply with. We've also got audio-visual equipment, quite a lot of products that come under that, as well as, what I mentioned before, luminaires for night lights and things like that.
Now, you mentioned there Tommy Tippy. That's played a big part in my life over the last 10 years. I think I've still got 4 or 5 Tommy Tippies in the cupboard. Can't bring myself to throw them away. My kids are 10 and 7, and we still got them in the cupboard. So thank you very much for the Tommy Tippy.
Well, I don't think I can take specific credit for those ones, but in the absence of anyone else, I will.
Now, Shahid, you're technical manager at the Electrical Contractors Association. Tell us a bit about the ECA and about your role there.
Okay, so just as a brief overview of the ECA, they are the largest trade association for electrical contractors in the UK, and was founded over 100 years ago, so we're well established. As the technical manager there, one of my major roles is to make sure that our members are kept up to date in terms of changes with standards. Changes in industry. This very much revolves around new and updating standards and exploring opportunities that may exist for members in terms of adopting new technologies, or such as heat pumps, or new ways of working, i.e. BIM. Being involved with standards and best practice is therefore necessary in terms of my job role. It also means that there's a voice for our members that can be expressed within standards and standards committees. And that's important because it's our guys that use the standards on a practical basis day to day.
Now, you all applied for the IEC Young Professionals Programme back in 2020. I was recording this early in 2021. I'm just keen to explore your sort of professional motivations for wanting to take part in the programme. Maybe if I come back to you, Fiona, why did you think this looks like an important programme for me? What were your motivations for wanting to take part?
I really wanted a better understanding of where, for example, the class limits in the standards that I'm using, they come from. How do they decide on what powers of lasers are safe or not safe, and really getting into some of the physics and the biology behind that, if I could. I was also fascinated by the process by which standards are compiled, how they're put together, where all the contributions are coming from, who they approach to write them, that sort of thing. And I've often found in the past that our clients, they struggle to interpret the standards that we're using as part of the reason they come to us in the first place. And I think a lot of people don't find standards very accessible. So what I would like to do with my time on the programme, if I can, is put together or start some sort of interface where standard users who have questions about how to correctly apply a standard, if they have any doubt, there's access to an expert so they can turn to and get their questions answered, so they know that they're applying the standards correctly and safely.
Was there a history, Fiona? You talked about your company there. Is there a history of the company of being involved in standardisation, or are colleagues involved at all?
Yes, the company's founder, Brian Tozer, he sadly died a few years ago. He was on the committee for writing 60825 Part 1, which is the standard I use most often.
And Sean, back to you. What were your motivations taking part? Are they similar to Fiona's there?
Yeah, they were pretty similar to Fiona's. I mean, there's a couple for me, but I think the first one for me, and probably the most important, which will probably be a common theme in all my answers throughout here, is it was really about meeting people. That, for me, is kind of one of the most important reasons. So, the organisation that I work in, we're relatively, we're not a tiny organisation, but the compliance department, there's like 5 or 6 people in there. So there's people you can have conversations with, but it's not the biggest of networks, So by being part of this program, my hope is that, I've widened my network for compliance and regulatory questions, to have more people to have those discussions with, because, it's sometimes quite a niche topic to talk with. You don't often encounter people day to day who work in the compliance field. So the more people that I know to have those conversations with, the better. But going beyond that, the reasons that Fiona mentioned, in regards to understanding the rationale, interpretations of why things are the way they are, they come up countless times in my organisation, and I think it helps infinitely if, instead of just telling the design team you need to make this X because I'm telling you to, as opposed to saying it needs to be X because A, B, C, it really helps with those discussions, because sometimes compliance and regulatory departments sometimes can be seen as a bit of a hindrance. But if you can provide that justification and reasoning as to why somebody has to do something, that helps. And sometimes when you just look at a standard in isolation, without being part of that standard writing process, you sometimes look at things and you think, why on earth is that requirement?
Mm-hmm.
So those I would say are my kind of two key reasons: the meeting of people and further understanding of rationale and why things are the way they are within standards.
Now, Shahid, Fiona and Sean are obviously coming at this from a private organisation perspective.
Yeah.
Is it any different for yourself, coming from an association? What were your motivations?
In terms of the reasons, they're an exact a copy of them. My motivations were exactly the same. It's meeting people and understanding why things are as such. One of the major standards that I work with is the BS 7671 IET wiring regs under JPEL 64, which is the committee that's responsible for maintaining that standard. And it's just understanding some of the legacy issues in there, just understanding why certain values were 6 mil in certain cases or 10 mil, based on just legacy issues, and how the network how it was and where it is now in terms of its load analysis and issues like that. So yeah, meeting people and just understanding why things are such were my main two reasons as well, to be honest.
You mentioned there, Shahid, the wiring regulations, a very important standard in the standards world, and I think it's something we should probably come back to and maybe do a separate episode on, because I think it's a really important thing to look at. So thank you for your motivations. Obviously, last year, 2020 was a very difficult year for everybody, and obviously COVID, as a global pandemic, affected the world. So you were due to go to Stockholm in October to take part in the programme, but that didn't obviously take place. So who wants to have a go at this? So sort of what happened? What did the IEC do for you in the place of being able to attend the programme in Stockholm?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind having a go for at that one. Well, if we can go back a little bit, so from a work point of view, it was pretty much business as usual with regards to COVID-19, except everything was now virtual. In fact, the volume of work was actually, in my opinion, we actually completed a lot more work because we didn't have the travel time between meetings, be them standards meetings or meetings with regards to best practice guides and updating those, or industry meetings as such, making things more efficient. With regards to the Young Professionals Programme, obviously it was a shame that the live meeting for 2020 was effectively cancelled. The planned trip to Geneva would have been a great experience. However, the IEC were in a position where they've offered us an opportunity to attend in 2021, which is much appreciated, especially with it being potentially Dubai. That makes it even more exciting.
And how about you, Sean? How was what had 2020 been like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like everyone with COVID, it's been not the most straightforward of years. I think in the context of the IEC and the Young Professionals Programme, slightly disappointing that we weren't able to go to the conference as planned. Going back to what I said earlier, one of my main motivations of this was being able to meet people, and there's only so much you can do speaking to people over Teams and things like that. It's quite difficult to build up any sort of relationship not in person. So I'd say that to me probably has been biggest problem this year in the context of the Young Professionals Programme, not being able to meet people. But, we have been part of the committees, so we've, while not being able to attend in person, I have been part of them, and I am sort of slowly getting involved in the standards making process. So while it hasn't been anyone's ideal year, it's got me involved, which is what I wanted, and I'm starting to get that further understanding of how things work. And, same as Shahid, I'm very much looking forward to the 2021 programme, which, touch wood, will go ahead.
Well, just on that, you're absolutely right, Sean, there about committees that you're currently on. And I want to talk about that in a second. But before, we should explain that obviously the event was supposed to take place in Stockholm, and then a decision was made to hold it in Geneva. And obviously with the conditions of the pandemic changing all the time, the idea was to run a virtual event, and obviously that wasn't able to take place either. It was felt better to postpone until 2021. So before we come to this year's programme, I just want to also explore your standards making experience to date. Now, something we've done at BSI over the last 3 or 4 years with the programme is that rather than young professionals attending the IEC programme and then coming back and working on standards committees, we encourage our young professionals to become standards makers before they attend the programme and get involved in standardization before they attend the meeting in the autumn. So maybe we'll start with you, Shahid. What committees have you become a member of, and what areas are you working on as a young standards maker?
So currently I'm a member of the L1 committee, which is the Electrotechnical Policy Committee at the BSI. I'm also a member of JPOL 64, which is, as mentioned, which covers the wiring regulations. I'm also a member of various other industry committees, so not really at a national level, but with regards to other organisations. The other major thing that I do is I input on various codes of practices as well to represent the views of our members. I'm currently involved with a publicly available spec document, a PAS document 3003, which is to do with the health and well-being performance of non-domestic buildings. So not electrical as such, but another area that, more building services, another area that is potentially open to our members, and various other codes of practices for organisations such as the IET, BISRIA and CIBSI.
And how about you, Sean? What's your standards making experience been like so far?
Yeah, so I'm on a handful of different committees. So I'm on CPL 34, which is for lamps. I mentioned about luminaires before, and night lights. CPL 61, which is safety of household electrical appliances, and then CPL 61/21, which is toys, which is probably the most important one for me. Now, I would say for me, it's been informative, and being part of multiple committees has meant there's quite a lot of documentation to absorb, and I'm still trying to perfect the art of which documents are important for me and which aren't, because what I would say is that all of these committees do generate quite a lot of documents. So for me, on the toys one, which say for me was the most important, is they haven't really been working on anything. I think I came in just as they had finished, a new update to the standard, so I was kind of coming in at the back end of things, and there wasn't really too much for me to get involved with. On the other ones, there is various work ongoing on them, but it doesn't directly apply to me. So overall, it's been more of a learning exercise as opposed to me being directly involved in anything. But I'm hopeful for 2021 that there will be more activities within those committees that I can get more directly involved in.
And how about your experience so far, Fiona? Which committees will you become a member of?
I have joined Committee 76, which is the Radiation Safety Committee. So that covers all of the standards I use frequently. And through joining that, I have been put in contact with one of the original writers of the standard I use most often, 685 Part 1, which is really exciting. And he has very kindly been answering some of the questions I've had about interpretation of the standard and the correct way of performing some of the calculations. And I've also begun to be able to see why the maths is done in that way. it's been a really useful insight into the standard for me. Apart from that, one of the highlights of this scheme has been being able to virtually attend the BSI conference in November, which was really, really useful in terms of understanding the changes which may or may not happen due to Brexit. It's reassuring to know that we're going to continue to be a member of the IEC, we're going to continue to use the same standards that we have previously. And that's been great information to be able to pass on to our clients who have had questions about this. Has been a cause of some concern amongst customers.
I think it's really fantastic to hear. Actually, you're in, all three of you, the enthusiasm, and sort of gusto in which you've got involved, even though you haven't yet gone on the program. And I think obviously the standards making world has gone online. The whole world's gone online. So it's given you opportunities to get involved. It is a shame that you haven't been able to meet people face to face, but as Tom Hanks says on a different podcast, this too shall pass. So at some point we will meet. We'll meet finally. But I just think it's fantastic to hear the way in which you've engaged with the standards making opportunities that have been put in front of you. So thank you very much for doing that. I suppose looking forward to this year's programme then, I've asked you about your motivations already, and your answers here may not be that much different, but I suppose, looking forward to Dubai in the autumn, and fingers crossed it's able to take place as a face-to-face activity. Maybe starting with you, Sean, what are you most looking forward to about this year's programme?
Well, I think just continuing the theme of my answers from earlier on, I would say the main thing that I'm looking forward to is actually just meeting people, the people on this podcast right now, but, those also part of the Young Professionals Programme from, other countries and standards bodies from around the world. So, I say that's kind of was my core reason for applying to be part of this, and that's, that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Fiona?
Like Sean, I'm really looking forward to meeting some of the people who have been exchanging emails with for months and having video calls with, and attending the program in Dubai will be really, really interesting.
It almost feels, obviously in the UK we're having a huge vaccination program, and something that's taking place in October almost feels in reach, doesn't it? There's something to be positive about there. How about you, Shahid? A similar motivation? What you're looking forward to most there, sort of getting to meet people finally?
Yeah, that's it exactly. Meet people. Undoubtedly, there's going to be people within that committee that are going to have different or alternative views to yourself, and you can learn from that experience. It's all about learning and growing. That's how I see this journey. Now
we're on the cusp of launching this year's the applications for this year's program. In fact, people, if you listen to the end of the podcast, there'll be information there about how you can apply for this year's program. Just a quick word from each of you. What would you say to other young professional engineers thinking about applying for this program? What would you say to them, Fiona?
Sorry, this is quite a difficult one. Can you come back to me? I'm sorry.
That's absolutely fine.
I don't mind. Matthew?
Sean, how about you? What would you say to others looking to apply?
Yeah, if anyone was asking me what I thought of this, I would absolutely encourage them to apply. Hopefully they will have a better year in regards to COVID than what we have. So, yeah, I would absolutely encourage them. I think if you've got an interest in this, then there's no better place to be than with the people who are making the standards.
How about you, Shahid?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is, look, this is an ideal opportunity for any like-minded engineer to engage with standard makers and be part of shaping our industry for the future. That's what it's all about. And even though it has been a funny year for all of us, I wouldn't have it any other way.
And okay, Fiona, final thought for you.
Yeah, I agree with Shahid and Sean. Obviously, I would encourage anybody to apply for this. I didn't want to give the impression that I wouldn't. And yeah, that has succeeded so far in fulfilling my aims of understanding the standards better and getting to grips with them. So if there is anybody out there who wants a better understanding of the standards, then absolutely this would help them.
So Nav, it's absolutely fantastic to have you back on the podcast. Now, back in episode 1, cast your mind back, you and Kat Rosier, we talked to you about standards and careers back in that very first episode, and we touched on the IEC Young Professionals Programme. But for those who haven't listened to it yet, that great episode, do please go back and listen to the fantastic episode. Maybe you could tell us a bit about your job and the role that standards play within your job.
Yeah, sure, Matthew. First of all, thank you again for having me back. It was a good podcast, and glad to be back here again. So about my job, so I'm a group leader for machine control and protection system at UK's government's fusion experiment machine in Oxfordshire. It's known as MAST Upgrade, and we are doing nuclear fusion experiments. And my role is to manage the team, lead the team, which looks after the machine control system, machine protection systems, and all the electronics control instrumentation associated with it. So that's that. Yeah, that's my role.
And the role that standards plays within that job?
Yes, yeah, huge, I will say. Most of the documents that we follow are recorded, are made in-house. So all of those documents, the technical documentation is based on the standards, IEC and BSI standards that we actually have already developed. So any technical, I would say even non-technical, all the documentation that we have, all the technical documentation management system, all the templates, they are also based on the IEC standards, based on IEC standards. So yeah, huge. I mean, it's kind of every day, every breath we actually do any work, there is some sort of standard behind it, and it could be from electrical installation, it could be from purchasing any electronic equipment. We have got some standards behind that, what and how are we supposed to create a new equipment that we have to use.
Now, Navdeep, you took part in the IEC Young Professionals Programme way back in 2017 when the programme took place in Vladivostok. Now, and I could ask you to cast your mind back now to sort of maybe early in 2017. And what were your motivations for wanting to apply to take part in the programme?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, 2017. I mean, to be honest, it feels like it was only last year when I went to Vladivostok. It was amazing experience, first of all. It was very good experience. It was three of us from the UK. We went there. And so what was my main reason was that I was always fascinated with standards. When I used to work in power station, I used to procure equipment, and we used to look into what standards do the equipment conform to. So I knew about standards, but I wanted to know what exactly happens behind making of those standards, and that's why I used to attend some of the conferences and some of the BSA conference and other events. And at one event, one of the young professional leader from the UK, Alan, he was actually talking about his experience, and listening to him, that was the actual main motivation for me to apply for next year's Young Professional. I said, "Oh, that sounds very interesting. You get to see many people. You get to see like-minded from different countries." So I said, that's a good opportunity for me to know and understand what goes behind making of those standards, those technical standards. So that's why I applied for the Young Professional Programme in 2017.
So that's obviously that's the BSI Education Podcast's very own Alan Sellers there, encouraging you to apply, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that we both mentioned that it was at Vladivostok. Now, everyone is still living through the pandemic, the global pandemic that is COVID-19, and the huge changes that's made to everyone's lives. And obviously, one of the biggest changes is the sort of inability of people to travel in the way that they wanted to. Now, would like to. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm certainly suffering from quite a bit of wanderlust at the moment, and the desire to travel is pretty strong. Now, Vladivostok sounds like an incredible place to go and visit. So could you paint that picture for us? What was that experience like of going to somewhere so different to where you currently live and work?
Yeah, I mean, amazing experience. So 12 hours of journey, first of all. It was like, okay, that's new, because I've been to different places, and the maximum I've been on plane it was 8 or 9 hours, but 12 hours straight on a plane, that was good experience. Getting there, so we were in a university campus, and it was 200 young professionals in total from 70 different countries. And that was just the young professional. So the young professional program is it goes in parallel with the actual standardization making process throughout that week or 2 weeks. So there's a general meeting, there's a standards management board meeting, there's other meetings happening in real time, while we as a young professional witness those meetings and also get to opportunity to participate in those meetings as well. So we had some breakout sessions where we all the young professionals we had a, you can say, task given, and then we brainstormed, talked about it. And it's amazing to see people from different countries and different cultures working together and coming up with brilliant ideas. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to present the idea of my group to the IEC executive board, so to the chair and rest of the young professionals committee. So, and that's the experience you won't get anywhere else, and that's why I would say young professional has given me the opportunity to do that, and also to understand the process as well. So to know exactly what's happening, how the standards are made, and you can see each country's representative, how they actually represent their own country in SMB or even standard makings process. So that was very good experience. Yeah.
I mean, you talked there at the beginning about earlier on about your sort of motivation to find out how things happen. It sounds to me then, having gone to Vladivostok and got involved in the program itself that was running parallel with the IEC's general meeting, it sounded like it sort of exceeded your expectations.
Yes, way beyond, way beyond. I was expecting more it to be like, we'll go there. I think some part was, definitely a new place to visit, Russia. That's never been there, so that was one thing. And the other thing was to actually network with the people. But yes, I mean the networking part, I will say that was cherry on top. I will say, because I knew that there will be more young professional, but having that strong network built around, I'm in touch with many of them even now. Actually, I was contacting someone this morning that you can't get without going in there. So yes, I mean it was way above my expectation. That whole program was.
So maybe the program's the gift that keeps on giving at the moment, which is fantastic to hear. Now, before you went on the program, I think I'm right in saying that you weren't a standards maker, you weren't participating in committees. So I'm keen to understand, what happened afterwards. How you became a standards maker. What committees were you working? What was the sorts of work that you were getting involved with as a result of going on the program?
Yep, sure. So after knowing what exactly happens in the standard making process, I had a bit more idea, and then I wanted to contribute to that as well, because I had experience of working in power stations and utility systems. So I had a good understanding of some instrumentation, and that was my strength. And then I said, okay, I want to use that strength to standards making. And the whole idea of young professional is actually to grow their interest into standard making process. So I contacted BSI, and also as I'm part of the institutes as well, professional institute body. So I contacted them, and then I'm representing the institute in TC65, or GEL 65, which is measurement and control standards for, which is mirroring TC65 up for IEC. So I'm part of one of the working group for TC65, so where I represent UK in international standards meeting, which last year we had 2 over Zoom, and then previously we had 2, both were in Europe. So I'm part of that. And now I've been invited to join other committees as well. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that once you are in, once you are aware of what happens, once you have gone into, then it opens doors to many other committees as well. So entirely up to a person, an individual, that how much time and how much interest they have, they can actually give it to the standards making process and BSI.
That's an interesting point, actually. Nav, how much time do you think? I know that it will vary month to month, but how much of your professional time is now taking up with being a standards maker?
I mean, it depends on the committee, how much work is happening in a committee. So committee I'm working on, or the working group I'm working on, I do get the documents from other working groups as well, which I can review if it falls within my understanding, my expertise. So I will say, if I want to say, if I can spend at least half an hour kind of a week, 2 hours a month, that's the minimum I will say that if I spend on it, that's good, because as part of the institute, I'm also working with the institute on the similar standard. So it helps in that sense. But again, if you are working on different committees, then the time requirement may be different. And then we do have every year meeting in with BSI, and then I have meeting with the technical committee members from IEC. That happens twice a week, and then it is 3 days uh, each time. So 6 days in there, and then twice in London or on Zoom with BSI. So 8 days there, and then the rest is all the documentation that I go through and put forward my comments and work on those.
And how does your employer view your role as a standards maker? Is it something that's very sort of prominent, or is it something that's just in the background? How does that work? How does your employer view your participation in standards making?
I think you said it right. They're different employers, and based on what area you're in and what committee you're working on. So my employer, they hugely support me working with BSI and IEC to create those standards. So they do give me the support whichever I need. So yes, so in terms of my timing and in terms of my expenses. So yes, some companies supporting, and I'm lucky enough to have an employer which supports these things.
Now we are looking forward to this year's program, and fingers crossed it would take place as a face-to-face activity in Dubai later in the year, in October. I suppose as a final thought then, Nav, what would you say to someone, a young professional engineer thinking about applying for this program? What would you say to them?
Yes, so this year in Dubai, like I said before, that this young professional program happens in parallel with the other standards making process. So I will be there anyway as part of my standards meeting, wherever it is. It's on Zoom or Dubai, wherever it is. But yes, I will definitely recommend anyone, any young professional, to apply for this position, to experience. So there's the experience of what happens in the standards making, and also you experience the networking and working with other young professionals from around the globe. That opportunity, it's very hard to get, and Matthew, you must have mentioned somewhere that it's all expenses paid by BSI. So definitely, I will say there's no brainer. Apply for this young professional program, so you get to see different. You get to see new place, and then you get to meet new people as well, and also you get to experience how standards making happens in the background, and actually you see that firsthand live, and I think this is must have experience for any young professional.
Alan, let's turn the tables on you again then, as I promised earlier, and get an employer's perspective on the programme. I suppose the question to you is why is the IEC Young Professionals Programme important for an employer like Dyson?
Well, I guess it starts really with my own personal experience. So having first-hand experience of the benefit to my own personal and professional development, I like to continue to support it by encouraging people within the team that I lead to apply. And through that, should they be successful and should they join the programme, they have the experience of understanding where standards come from and gain a much wider professional network, which then supports them in the development of standards, but also in the understanding of standards. And both of those are quite key for the roles that we have in our team. Sometimes reading a standard can be a bit like reading a strange legal text, and really you need to have the insight, or having the insight into how it was developed, the processes that the IEC uses, but also the thinking that goes on within a technical committee. Both of those are invaluable for applying standards and testing to standards. So that's really why we like to support it.
I suppose if there's a message then to an employer that was looking at this for the first time afresh, what would the message be from you, from your employer's perspective, to them to say, yep, this is, you should look at this for your young engineers? What would be the message to them?
My message would be, there isn't another development opportunity like this for employees that you have. The UK, the way it's run in the UK is there are partner trade associations, which I'm sure we'll come on to. And I think we have Raj from BEMA speaking later in the podcast. They support this programme, so there is no expense in terms of travel, accommodation, or anything like that needs to be covered. All it is the time that the person needs to attend. So there's really very little outlay, and the return on investment that you get back with somebody that's more connected, somebody that's more knowledgeable, somebody that's developed through being in and around different people with different thinking styles, different thoughts, different perspectives. It's quite difficult to quantify, but having seen the effect that it has on people that have attended, it really is quite a good return, I'd say.
Now, to complete the picture then, let's hear from the perspective of both from BSI and also one of our partner organisations in the programme. We spoke to Geraldine Salt and Raj Vagdia. Now, Geraldine is a standards development manager here at BSI, and Raj, as you mentioned there, Alan, he's technical director at the trade association BEMA. So, Geraldine, I introduced you there as a standards development manager at BSI. Can you tell us a bit about that role and what it involves?
Yes, well, I manage BSI committees, mainly in the electrotechnical area. So subjects range from electric kettles, sunbeds, washing machines, fridge freezers, up into electromagnetic compatibility, multimedia products, and then a little bit of non-electrical stuff such as valves. So quite a mixture. On a day-to-day basis, my job really involves making sure all the relevant documentation gets to the right experts so that the UK is able to have its voice heard internationally. Every draft standard or draft amendment to a standard from international and European committees needs to be considered by the corresponding BSI committee and commented or voted on before the deadlines which are set by international and European bodies. And it's my job to make sure that all the members of the BSI committees have opportunity to comment on drafts and also have opportunity to comment on other members' comments. And then with input from the chair of the committee, we have to get the committee to reach a consensus position. And consensus doesn't mean that all members have to agree with each other, but the BSI definition of consensus is general agreement, but characterised by the absence of sustained opposition. So getting to a general agreement can be quite tricky. Discussion of these drafts then often needs to take place at a committee meeting rather than by correspondence, although some are dealt with by correspondence. But it's my job to organise committee meetings and to minute the discussions in the meetings. Obviously, at the moment, all meetings are taking place as web conferences, which is a bit of a challenge. It's much easier with face-to-face meetings, but we've been getting there.
Yes, we are in very challenging times, aren't we? I'm sure you must tell your friends that you are the standards. You're involved in standards for sunbeds. I like that. So yeah. That's fantastic. So in terms of your standard story, we love a story and a journey on the podcast. What's your particular standard story? How did you get to this point? You know, what were you seduced by standards? A lot of our guests have been seduced by standards. Were you seduced by standards?
I can't really say that I was seduced by standards. But my standard story actually began 31 years ago. Yes, I've been around the block a few times. I've got a business studies background, and before I joined BSI, I worked for a small legal body and hadn't any knowledge of BSI at that time, other than something about a kite mark. And in those days, there was no internet. So before I came for my job interview, I actually went to a public library to find out about BSI. And then when I started at BSI, it was in a more administrative role, And then after a while, I took on some international and European committees, and that was great because I had the pleasure of travelling all over the world for about 10 years and met lots of experts on different committees all around the world. So I enjoyed doing that. And then for family reasons, I changed to working only with national committees with no travel, which is what I still do now.
Now, this podcast episode is all about the sort of young professional voice in standards making. Now, I'm really keen to understand for your particular area of work. You talked there about generating consensus within committees of experts, but why is the young professional voice important for BSI and for standards making?
I would say that young professionals provide a fresh approach to BSI's work. They tend to look at standards or standards issues from a new angle. Of course, they're educated to a very high level and are gaining practical experience of using standards in industry. So having them on the committee while they're still relatively new in the industry role means that they've recently learned the latest methods of manufacturing and testing, and they're willing to question the way the standards are written in a way which some of the more long-standing members might not question. So I think they bring their new ideas to the table and get the committee to revisit some of the older methods being used in standards. That doesn't necessarily mean that every time they suggest a change, then it's going to be taken on board by the committee, but it does generate a discussion about why the standard is written a certain way, and ensures the committee doesn't get stuck in its ways with the way it does things.
Now, you've in some of your committees, you've had previous participants in the IEC Young Professionals Programme. Can you give us some examples of sort of the influence and impact they've made to the standards committees you manage?
Well, they've definitely contributed new ideas to committee discussions, and certainly the ones on my committees aren't afraid to ask questions. I've noticed that quite often in IEC TC 61, which is the safety of electrical household products area, that there'll be a proposal from another national committee which is perhaps not terribly well understood. Sometimes this could be like a language or translation issues, and the IEC young professionals tend to ask a lot of questions about these and very good at making suggestions as to what the original intention of the proposal was, or the potential consequence of the proposal might be. They seem to be very willing to discuss and put comments forward. So I guess they've brought a certain energy to the committee. They're happy to join in on international working groups and to travel in the days that we could travel. So, for example, they've got very involved in TC 61 working groups. Also, because they've been part of this whole IEC Young Professional Programme, they tend to have a ready-made network of other IEC young professionals who are on other committees. So because of that, they find it quite easy to consult widely outside of the committee. They've got good contacts already set up. And they've also got involved with some IEC strategic committees. Like Alan, for example, is on one of the strategic groups of the IEC Standardization Management Board, and a member of one of the council board task force. So all in all, I'd say their novel approach and enthusiasm and their ability to network well has definitely made them an asset to the committees which I look after.
So Raj, I introduced you there as Technical Director at the Trade Association BEMA. Now, we'll come to BEMA in a second, but could you tell us a bit more about your job and what it involves?
Sure, Matthew. As Technical Director, I am responsible for technical policy covering product regulations, standardization policy, and conformity assessment policy. In the role, I represent BEMA on several industry groups, both at national and European level. I also represent BEMA on a number of strategic standardization committees, as well as standards making committees within BSI, which is the UK's national standards body, CENELEC, the European Electrotechnical Standards Organization of Europe, and IEC, the International Electrotechnical Standards Organization. I am also currently the UK member of the IEC's Conformity Assessment Board. And this is the board that is responsible for setting up policy for the conformity assessment schemes that IEC runs.
Now, in previous podcast episodes, Raj, we've talked about the importance of stakeholder engagement and stakeholder participation in standards making, and trade associations obviously play an incredibly important role for BSI and for the standards making world. Now, BEMA is a trade association. Many people might not know what BEMA does. I know that BEMA representatives sit on a huge range of standards committees for BSI. But can you tell us about BEMA, what it is and what it does?
Sure. BEMA, as a UK trade association, we represent manufacturers and providers of energy infrastructure technologies and systems. We have member companies in all different sectors of the industry. There's around 200 members in our organization, from startups, SMEs to large multinationals. So it does bring a wider representation into BEMA's activities. Our members' products ensure low carbon energy and environmental services are delivered safely, securely, and efficiently to UK homes, businesses, transport, and grid networks. We support our members in ensuring that UK has a strong electrotechnical industry that is recognized as an essential part of modern society, bringing invaluable economic, social, and environmental benefits. BEMA's activities are divided in 4 main sectors. We have the heating and ventilation sector, the building electrical systems sector, the flexible energy systems sector, and the network sector.
Now, we're always interested, Raj, to hear our guests' standard stories or their journeys to this point. We've interviewed lots of different people, and everybody has come at standards from a different perspective. They may not have been involved in standards making all that long, or they may have come from a completely different sector or industry. I'm really keen to understand your standard story and your standards journey. How did you get to this point in working with standards? Were you seduced by standards?
Not sure whether seduced is the right word to use, but my journey began as a test engineer in a laboratory in a manufacturing company. That's where I started my career as a professional. And it was in this role that I was first introduced to British standards. As a test engineer, I had to read, understand, and apply the test requirements contained within the standards to the products that I was testing. And it was in this role that I got to learn about quality system standards and product standards. As it happens, the company I was working for at that time happened to be a member of BEMA, and it was through BEMA that I got involved in standards making within BSI and eventually in Senelec and IEC. The role developed further on. I became a lab manager, and in that role, I was more heavily involved in quality system standards. And then I moved on to another position, which was a certification body, third-party certification body, where again heavily working with standards, applying standards to product testing and certification. And eventually I ended up at BEMA, where I'm now performing the role I am, which again is heavily influenced by standards and the value that standards brings to the industry.
I suppose as an engineer, standards has played a hugely important role in your professional practice since the very beginning.
Indeed, it has. I started my education was in electrical and electronic engineering, and within that studying, there was a little bit of standards involvement, not a lot, 1 or 2 standards mentioned here and there, but it was really through the working life that I've come to know and understand standards and standards making as a whole.
Now, you wouldn't accept then you may or not been seduced by standard, but you're certainly steeped in standards now, Raj. So why do you think, why is the young professional voice so important for standards making?
I think young professionals can bring a fresh perspective and a different way of thinking to standards making. Young professionals have grown up around technology and as such have a natural affinity for technology and applying technological solutions to challenges. And also young professionals tend to be adaptable and agile. These are qualities that will greatly benefit standards making, especially to meet challenges presented by issues such as climate change, achieving carbon neutrality, the drives towards electrification, and advancement in areas such as artificial intelligence, this changing environment, changing landscape will present new challenges in terms of safety, quality, and I think young professionals are ideally placed to bring new thinking into resolving these challenges.
Now, BEMA has been a fantastic supporter and partner for BSI and others for the IEC Young Professionals Programme. So you've mentioned some really positive general observations there about why the young professional voice is important for standards making. But why has BEMA supported the IEC programme? Why is it going to continue to support the programme?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Matthew, BEMA is one of the leading nominating organizations to BSI, and we have members serving on several standards committees at national, European, and international level. But we recognize the challenge presented by the lack of young professionals becoming standard makers. It has become increasingly difficult to have members volunteer their time to standards making. It's becoming a challenge to bring new blood into the system, to persuade the managers, the directors to allow their employees time to participate in standards making. And if the UK electrotechnical industry is to maintain its influence in standards setting and standards making, I believe it is crucial that a new generation of young professionals become standards maker. And the IEC's Young Professional Programs is one way we see this being achieved. As evident over the past few years, the program has produced enthusiastic young professionals who've gone on to take on leadership roles in standards making. Alan is a very good example here.
Well, Alan, that was good. It was fantastic to hear the perspectives of the young professionals who benefited from the programme, and also from the group of 2020 who are benefiting, maybe not the way they anticipated, but they will hopefully get a second bite at the cherry in 2021, which is fantastic. Also great to hear from colleagues here at BSI and from BEMA about why they value the programme, and obviously great to hear your employer perspective too. And finally, also fantastic to hear from the IEC about the impact the programme has had and the plans for the future.
It really has been quite a packed podcast.
It certainly has. Now, applications are now open for the 2021 programme, due to take place in October in Dubai. You can find out more at bsigroup.com/education. All the details are on the website, and also there are details in the episode notes. And good luck with your applications. So I suppose all left me to say thank you very much to Aristia, to Navdeep, to Fiona and Sean, to Shahid, Geraldine and Raj for fantastic contributions. And of course, Alan, thank you too.
Yeah, and thank you, Matthew.
You have been listening to an episode of the BSI Education Podcast. To find out more, visit bsigroup.com/education.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.